I'd kissed boys before and felt nothing but a hollow sense of duty. But the first time I kissed her, my best friend, the one who knew all my secrets, the world finally made sense. It was like a spark igniting a fire that had been waiting a lifetime to burn. 24 years later, that same spark is still there every time her lips meet mine. From sweet beginnings to unforgettable romances, subscribe for lesbian love stories that inspire and connect. The space between the words. The scent of old paper, lemon-scented industrial cleaner, and adolescent anxiety. That was the atmosphere of Mr. Davies' sophomore English class on the first day of the spring semester. To March, it was a familiar cocktail of discomfort. She preferred the chalk dust and polished leather of the gymnasium, a world of clear rules and measurable outcomes. Here, in the realm of symbolism and subtext, she felt perpetually off balance, a visitor from a land of literal, physical truths. She slid into her assigned seat, row 3, desk 5, and kept her gaze fixed on the graffiti carved into the desktop. A lopsided heart with JT plus SB forever etched inside a clumsy arrow. Forever was a long time. A concept as foreign to her 16-year-old self as the sonnets of Shakespeare we were about to dissect. The chair next to hers scraped against the linoleum floor. I sat down, a bundle of nervous energy contained within a lanky, 5'10" frame. My name is Roxanne. I'd just transferred from a school 2 counties over, a disorienting mid-year shift that had left me feeling like a ghost in my own life. My world had been the resonant thump of a basketball on a polished court, the squeak of sneakers, the easy, loud camaraderie of a team. This new school was smaller, quieter, and somehow sadder, its hallways painted a defeated shade of beige. I remember the first thing I noticed about her wasn't her face, but her hands. They rested on the desk, fingers long and capable, nails cut short and practical. There was a strength to them, a quiet competence that seemed at odds with the way she held herself, shoulders slightly hunched as if trying to take up less space. Mr. Davies, a man whose tweed jacket seemed to sigh with the weight of his unfulfilled literary ambitions, began roll call. When he said, "March Vance," she offered a quiet, "Here," without looking up. Her voice was lower than I expected, a soft alto. Then he called, "Roxanne Flores." I raised a hand. "Present." March's head turned a fraction, her eyes, a startling shade of hazel, more green than brown, flicking toward me for a half-second before returning to the safety of the scarred desktop. A quick, assessing glance. I felt it like a physical touch, a tiny spark against my skin. The problem presented itself immediately. Mr. Davies instructed us to open our copies of To Kill a Mockingbird. A communal groan rippled through the room. We weren't groaning at the book, but at the sight of it. The school's budget had been slashed, and our classroom set was incomplete, a collection of battered paperbacks with cracked spines and pages soft as cloth from years of use. "I'm short 3 books," Mr. Davies announced, peering over his glasses. "You'll have to share. Vance, Flores, you're on one." March's shoulders stiffened almost imperceptibly. She pulled a book from her backpack and set it squarely in the middle of the joined desktop. A peace offering, or a territorial demarcation? I wasn't sure. "Thanks," I murmured, scooting my chair closer. The movement brought me into her orbit. I caught a faint scent of cocoa butter and something else, something clean and sharp like rain on concrete. We began to read silently, our heads bent over the shared text. My method was slow, deliberate. I savored sentences, turned phrases over in my mind, imagining the heat of an Alabama summer, the rustle of Scouts' overalls. I was a slow, immersive reader. March, I would soon learn, was a speedster. Her rhythm was entirely different. She'd finish a page in half the time it took me. And then, the most unnerving thing began to happen. I would feel her gaze on me. Not on the book, but on me. On the side of my face, on my hands, tracking my progress down the page. It was a laser focus, intense and utterly confusing. A flush would creep up my neck. Was there something on my face? Was my concentration so obvious? Did she think I was a slow reader, an idiot? My own reading would falter under the weight of her silent scrutiny. The words would jumble, and I'd have to start a sentence over, which only prolonged the agonizing wait for her to look away. It felt like a test I was failing. This quiet, intense girl with the capable hands was silently judging my literary pace and finding me wanting. The tension was a live wire between us, humming with a strange, unspoken energy. This became our daily ritual. The shared book. The silent reading. Her disconcerting gaze. My flustered response. We didn't speak beyond the necessary pleasantries. You're here early. Did you do the homework? Can you pass the pencil? Our conversations were functional, transactional. Yet, for 20 minutes every day, we existed in the most intimate, wordless standoff. Outside of class, our worlds orbited separately but occasionally intersected in the gravitational pull of overlapping friend groups. March was a gymnast, part of a small, fiercely dedicated squad that practiced before and after school. I found my place on the basketball court, the new forward with a decent jump shot and a lot to prove. I heard about her before I really knew her. Oh, March. She's crazy quiet. But a total badass on the bars. You should see her. This from Chloe, a friend who floated between the art room and the gym. The dichotomy intrigued me. The girl who seemed to fold in on herself in English class was a badass in her element. I couldn't reconcile the two images. The opportunity to see for myself came a few weeks later. Chloe was buzzing about the annual gymnastics showcase, a non-competitive event where the team performed their routines for friends and family. You have to come. March's doing a floor routine she choreographed herself. It's amazing. I went, partly out of friendship with Chloe, partly out of a curiosity I couldn't name. The gymnasium was transformed. The lights were dimmed, a single spotlight illuminated the various apparatuses, and music echoed in the vast space instead of the usual coaches' shouts and thuds of landing mats. It felt sacred, like a chapel dedicated to physical grace. I found a seat in the bleachers, feeling oddly nervous. The girls marched in, not in their usual warm-up sweats, but in sleek, sequined leotards. And there was March. My breath caught. She looked different. Her usually loose hair was pulled back into a severe, sleek bun that highlighted the elegant line of her neck and the sharp definition of her jaw. The leotard was a deep emerald green, and it revealed a physique I had never truly appreciated. Compact, powerful, every muscle carved and defined. She wasn't just fit. She was a study in strength. But it was her expression that truly undid me. In class, her face was a placid lake, revealing nothing. Here, as she waited her turn, it was a mask of fierce concentration. There was no shyness, no desire to shrink. She looked formidable. Her name was called for the floor routine. The opening chords of a haunting, powerful song I didn't recognize filled the air. She walked to the center of the mat, struck her starting pose, and then she unfolded. What followed was not merely a series of flips and jumps. It was a story. Her body was the language. There was a section of slow, beautiful contortions, backbends that spoke of deep yearning, her hands reaching for something just out of frame. Then the music swelled, and she exploded into a series of powerful tumbling passes, round-off, back handspring, layout, that seemed to defy physics. She flew. The strength in those quiet hands was now evident as they punched into the mat, propelling her into the air with breathtaking force. But it was the look on her face that held me captive. A look of absolute, unadulterated confidence. A raw, burning passion. This was her voice. This was what she sounded like when she wasn't using words. The shy girl from English class was a fiction. This powerful, artistic, breathtaking creature, was the truth. The routine ended with her in a final, triumphant pose, chest heaving, a sheen of sweat on her skin, a smile, a real, unreserved smile, breaking across her face as the audience erupted. I was on my feet, clapping until my hands stung, my heart hammering against my ribs for reasons that had nothing to do with physical exertion. I walked home that night through the cool spring air, my mind reeling. The image of her, powerful and radiant under the lights, was burned onto my retinas. I felt a confusing whirlwind of emotions, awe, certainly, respect, but also something else, something warmer and more unsettling. A pull. A fascination that went far beyond academic curiosity. I had seen a secret part of her, and I felt privileged and unnerved. Who was March Vance? The dynamic in English class shifted the next day. The shared book was still a point of contact, but now when I felt her gaze on me, it wasn't just unnerving. It was intriguing. I started to steal glances of my own. I noticed the faint dusting of freckles across the bridge of her nose. The way she bit her lower lip when she was thinking. The small, silver ring she wore on her right hand. One day, my frustration and curiosity boiled over. I was in the middle of a particularly dense passage, hyper-aware that she had finished the page ages ago and was, once again, watching me. Instead of freezing, I did something bold. I stopped reading. I slowly turned my head and met her gaze full-on. Her eyes widened in sheer panic, like a deer in headlights. A deep blush instantly flooded her cheeks. She looked utterly mortified. "What?" I whispered, my voice low so Mr. Davies wouldn't hear. "Why do you always do that?" She stared at me, her mouth slightly agape. For a terrifying second, I thought she might cry. Then she swallowed hard and gestured faintly with her chin toward the book. I read fast," she stammered, her voice barely audible. "I'm just waiting for you to finish, so I can turn the page." The simplicity of the explanation was so absurd, so utterly devoid of the mysterious subtext I had constructed, that I just stared at her. All this time, all this agonizing, all this electric tension, and it was just logistics. She was a faster reader. A laugh bubbled up in my throat, a sound of pure relief and amusement. I choked it back, but a wide grin spread across my face. Her own panic subsided, replaced by a look of sheepish embarrassment, and then a tiny, hesitant smile touched her lips. It was the first real smile I'd seen from her outside of the gymnasium, and it felt like a victory. "Oh," I said, the word laden with a universe of understanding. "Okay. Well, just nudge me or something next time. You're making me nervous." She nodded, a quick, jerky movement. "Sorry." "Don't be." From that moment, the wall between us crumbled. The shared book was no longer a barrier. It became a bridge. We started to talk. Real talk. We'd whisper about the characters. She thought Scout was a brat, I thought she was a hero. We'd complain about the homework, speculate about Mr. Davies' home life, and eventually, we began to talk about ourselves. I learned she loved gymnastics not for the competition, but for the storytelling, the control, the feeling of her body as a perfect instrument. She learned I loved basketball for the chaos, the teamwork, the adrenaline of the unpredictable. We discovered a shared love for terrible 90s pop music and the specific brand of existential angst that only being 16 in a small town can provide. We found ourselves walking the same way after school, our conversations stretching beyond the final bell. Our friendship solidified in the most analog of ways. A shared notebook. It was her idea. A simple black and white composition book. "My friends and I do this," she said one day, shoving it into my hands between classes. "We just write stuff. Thoughts. Songs. Dumb things. Pass it around. You can write in it too. If you want." It was a monumental gesture of trust from someone so reserved. That notebook became our secret dialogue. We traded it back and forth like a sacred text. Within its pages, we were both braver. "Saw a dog today that looked like a mop," I wrote one afternoon, bored in history class. "Made me think of you. Kidding. Kinda." The next day, the notebook was in my locker. Beneath my message, she had written, "Your jump shot reminds me of a startled giraffe. Not kidding. At all." I burst out laughing right there in the hallway. But the entries grew deeper. "I sometimes feel like I'm playing a part," she wrote. "In the gym, I know who I'm supposed to be. Everywhere else, it's like I'm waiting for a script that never comes." I wrote back, "I feel like I got thrown into the wrong play. Everyone else knows their lines, and I'm just faking it." We shared things in that notebook we wouldn't dare say aloud. My messy, confusing feelings about a boy I'd kissed at a party, how it felt like nothing, like checking a box. Her fears about the future, the pressure from her coach, the quiet isolation of being so dedicated to something no one else at our school really understood. The year bled away, from the budding promise of spring to the lazy, dense heat of summer, and then into the crisp nostalgia of fall. Our friendship deepened, becoming the most significant relationship in my life. Chloe would roll her eyes and call us codependent. We just laughed. They didn't understand. They didn't have a notebook. But my own notebook was filling with a secret I couldn't yet confide, even to its pages. My feelings for March were shifting, changing into something I didn't have a name for. It was more than friendship. It was a constant, low hum of awareness. I'd noticed the way her laughter, now more frequent and unreserved, made my stomach flip. I'd find myself staring at the way her eyelashes fanned against her cheeks when she looked down at our shared book, now a comfortable, familiar intimacy instead of a source of tension. The catalyst was a movie. A rented VHS tape, watched at her house, a bowl of popcorn between us on the couch. A scene where the heroine finally kissed the heroine. It wasn't graphic or even particularly romantic, but it was undeniable. And it clicked something into place in my brain with an almost audible sound. I wanted to kiss March. The thought was so terrifying, so enormous, that I felt dizzy. It wasn't a casual whim. It was a fundamental need, a deep, bodily certainty. I thought about the brief, empty kisses I'd exchanged with boys, how they felt like practice for a feeling that never arrived. The idea of kissing March felt like the real thing. The destination. The fear was paralyzing. What if I was wrong? What if I ruined the best thing in my life? What if she looked at me with disgust or, worse, pity? The potential cost was astronomical. So I buried the feeling. I poured it into basketball, into homework, into pages of the shared notebook that I filled with safe, neutral topics. But the want was a living thing, growing in the silence. Winter came, and with it, the Christmas formal. We went together, as friends. She wore a simple dark blue dress that made her eyes look like deep water. I wore a suit, a rejection of the frilly dresses everyone else had on. We danced, laughed, and got punch spilled on us. It was perfect, and it was agony. Standing there with her, my hand on the warm bare skin of her back during a slow song, the want was a physical ache. The night wound down. We ended up back at my house, my parents asleep upstairs. We were buzzing with the residual energy of the dance, too wired to sleep. We collapsed onto the living room couch, still in our formal wear, and I flicked on the TV. A VH1 Behind the Music special was on, about Tiffany, the 80s pop star. We started giggling at the big hair and the dramatic narration. Then it happened. The show cut to a performance. Tiffany, on stage, singing her biggest hit. I Think We're Alone Now. The synth-pop beat filled the quiet room. We fell silent, watching, the ridiculousness of the moment giving way to something else. The song was about stolen moments, secret love, the thrilling, terrifying bubble of two people alone in a crowd. The lyrics, which I'd heard 100 times before, suddenly felt profound, meant for us. Children behave. The light from the TV flickered across March's face in the darkroom. She was smiling faintly at the screen, unaware of the war raging inside me. My heart was a drum solo, loud and frantic. This was it. The fear was still there, a screaming siren in my mind, but it was being drowned out by a louder, more insistent truth. I had to know. I turned to her. She sensed the movement and turned her head to look at me, her smile fading into a question at the intensity on my face. March, I whispered. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Her eyes searched mine, wide and confused. The world shrunk to the space between us on that old floral couch. The synth beat pulsed around us, a soundtrack to my impending heartbreak or salvation. I leaned in. I moved slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, to stop me, to say no. She didn't move. She just watched me, her breath catching. And then my lips were on hers. It was not a dramatic, movie-perfect kiss. It was tentative, soft, a question. For one heart-stopping second, there was nothing. Just the terrifying sensation of my lips against hers, still and unresponsive. And then she kissed me back. It was like striking a match in a dark room. A spark, then a flare of pure, undiluted heat. Her mouth moved against mine, and it was an answer to a question I'd been asking my whole life. Her hand came up to cup my jaw, her touch firm and sure, and a shudder went through my entire body. This was nothing like the kisses I'd had before. Those were ideas of kisses. This was a fact. It was chemistry, biology, physics, a fundamental law of the universe revealing itself. It was warmth and softness and the faint taste of punch and mint, and it was right. We broke apart, gasping for air. Our foreheads rested together, our eyes still closed. We were both shaking. I opened my eyes. She was looking at me, her gaze blazing with the same shock, the same terrifying joy that was exploding inside me. There were no words. None were needed. The question had been asked and answered. I wanted to chase that feeling forever. Underscore 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 underscore. The years that followed were a golden-hued tapestry woven with the threads of our lives together. College in the same city, her on a gymnastics scholarship, me on a basketball one. Our first tiny apartment that smelled of mildew and promise, where we painted the walls sunflower yellow and slept on a mattress on the floor, feeling like queens of our own domain. We learned each other's rhythms, the map of each other's hearts. The love was emotional, a deep and abiding current that ran beneath the surface of our daily lives. It was in the way she'd leave a warm towel on the radiator for me after late practice. It was in the way I'd proofread her essays, my red pen circling typos while she slept, her head pillowed on her arms at the kitchen table. It was in the silent communication across a crowded room, a raised eyebrow or a slight smile that said, "I see you. I'm here. Let's go home." It was a love that felt like coming home to a place I didn't know I'd been missing. It was safe, but it was never boring. It was the steady ground beneath my feet and the wind beneath my wings, all at once. When we decided to get married, it was less a decision and more a recognition of a state that already existed. We were already a unit, a partnership. We wanted to stand before our people and name it, to sanctify it with vows. But the path to that day was not without its obstacles. The biggest one, my mother. My mother, Isabella Flores, was a force of nature. A devout Catholic who had raised 3 children largely on her own after my father passed. She was loving, fierce, and traditional. She adored March, adored her steadiness, her quiet strength, the way she clearly doted on me. She called her the Dutch girl with the good head on her shoulders. But adoring your daughter's best friend was a universe away from accepting her as her daughter's wife. We told her over Sunday dinner. The air grew thick and heavy after I spoke the words, "Mom, we're engaged. We're going to get married." The silence that followed was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. She put her fork down carefully. She looked from my face, shining with hope, to March's, which was carefully neutral, braced for impact. "Married," my mother repeated, the word flat. "How can you get married? It's not legal." "It will be, Mom," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "In some states it is. We'll go where we need to." "But, the church," she began, her voice cracking. "Roxanne, what about God? What about your soul?" It was March who spoke then, her voice calm and steady, though I could feel the fine tremor in her hand where it rested on mine under the table. "Señora Flores," she said, using the formal title she always used with my mother. "What I feel for your daughter. I believe God gave me that feeling. It's the most true and good thing in my life. How can something that inspires so much love be wrong?" My mother looked at her, her eyes filled with a storm of conflict, love for us warring with a lifetime of doctrine. She didn't say another word. She just stood up, cleared her plate, and went into her room, closing the door softly behind her. It was a rejection that felt like a physical wound. For weeks, she was coldly polite. She took our phone calls but spoke only of the weather, of my siblings. The word wedding was a ghost in our conversations, unseen and haunting. March was my rock. "Give her time," she'd whisper, holding me at night when I cried from the pain of it. "She loves you. She just needs to find her way." March's satisfaction, her sense of wholeness in our relationship, wasn't dependent on my mother's approval, but she ached for it for my sake. She understood that for me, Our union wouldn't be completely whole without the blessing of the woman who had taught me what love was. The turning point came unexpectedly. March's parents had flown in from the Netherlands for a visit. We hosted a dinner at our apartment. My mother came, stiff and formal. The conversation was stilted until March's mother, Ank, a warm, straightforward woman, began talking about their own wedding planning. "And you, Isabella," Ank said, turning to my mother with a bright smile. "You must be so excited. To see your daughter so happy, so loved. It's all a mother wants, isn't it?" My mother looked into Ank's open, happy face, and then at March, who was patiently explaining a Dutch tradition to my younger brother. She looked at me, at the way I watched March, my love for her plain on my face. The fortress around my mother's heart crumbled. Tears welled in her eyes. "Yes," she whispered, her voice thick. "It is all I want." She reached across the table and took my hand, then March's. "I am sorry. It has been hard for me to understand. But I see it. I see the love. And it is good." It wasn't a full theological reconciliation. There would be more conversations, more tears. But it was an acceptance. It was her blessing. And it was everything. Our wedding was not in a church, but in a sun-drenched garden. I wore a tailored ivory suit. March wore a simple gown of ivory silk that flowed like water. When she walked toward me, her hand tucked into her father's arm, she wasn't the shy girl from English class or the powerful gymnast. She was just my March, her eyes locked on mine, full of a love so profound it stole the air from my lungs. We wrote our own vows. When it was my turn, my voice shook. "March, you were the first person who ever truly saw me. You saw the real me, past the bravado, past the fear. You are my best friend, my favorite hello, and my hardest goodbye. I fell in love with you sharing a book, and I promise to share my life, my heart, and every single page of whatever comes next with you." Tears streamed down her face as she spoke her vows. "Roxanne, you taught me how to use my voice outside of the gym. You made me brave. You are the spark that lights up my whole world. I promise to always be your safe place to land, to always turn the page with you, and to love you with a fierceness that lasts forever." We were pronounced spouses for life. We kissed, and the spark was there, as bright and brilliant as the first time, now surrounded by the cheers of everyone we loved. 13 years of marriage. 2 beautiful children later. A fierce, funny little girl who has my mother's eyes and a thoughtful, gentle boy who has March's quiet concentration. The emotional love has only deepened, matured like a fine wine. It's in the way we tag team at 3 a.m. with a sick child, a silent exchange of exhaustion and solidarity. It's in the way we still laugh until we cry over the same stupid jokes. It's in the way we hold each other after a hard day, without needing to say a word, our hearts communicating in a language older than speech. This morning, the house was a whirlwind of misplaced shoes, lunchbox packing, and urgent calls for homework help. We moved around each other in the kitchen, a well-practiced dance of getting everyone out the door. Finally, the kids were on the bus, the silence ringing in their wake. I was loading the dishwasher, my mind already ticking through my to-do list. March came up behind me, her arms slipping around my waist, her chin resting on my shoulder. Her body, still strong and solid, fit against mine like it was made to be there. "Hey," she said softly, her voice a low vibration against my back. I leaned back into her embrace, into her familiar, steady strength. "Hey, yourself." She turned me around to face her. There are faint lines at the corners of her eyes now, lines etched by years of laughter and sun. Her hair, once dark brown, is threaded with silver I love to trace. She is more beautiful to me now than she was that night under the gym lights. She looked at me with those hazel eyes, still seeing me, truly seeing me, after all this time. She smiled, that same slow, sweet smile that had unraveled me in a high school English class. And she kissed me. It wasn't a dramatic, movie-perfect kiss. It was a soft, familiar press of lips, a morning kiss, a kiss that said I'm here, I love you, we've got this. But deep within it, under layers of history and comfort and unwavering trust, I felt it. The spark. The same exact, undeniable spark from a dusty couch in 1998. It hadn't faded. It had just become part of the eternal fire. I kissed her back, chasing that feeling, knowing with absolute certainty that I would get to chase it forever. Our love was a story that started with a shared book, and we were still writing it, one beautiful, emotional, satisfying page at a time.